I nervously gripped my right arm with my left hand. 2 weeks ago today, I stood in front of you to present a brief history of the company Apple. I spoke in reference to my informative speech I gave to my class 2 weeks and 2 days prior. I had just mistakenly said exactly what was on my outline, not knowing I was going to present 2 days late. Today, I am here to demonstrate a prototype for a product with an origin story that will not only rival that of the origin story behind the first 2 Apple computers, but will instead completely blow out of the water that story. Today, you will be among the first to witness something spectacular. It can solve fine motor skill and coordination issues. It can make you better at sports. It can prevent many injuries and handle more weight than anything that can be naturally achieved. But first, let's talk about something all of us have in this room: a right arm. What are the problems with arms? They're prone to injury. They're slow, and some people are better at using them than others, and some people don't have them at all. Think about this for a second. What if we not only leveled the playing field for everyone, but gave them something even better? You might be thinking about prosthetics, but it's arguable at best that these in their current state are better than a regular arm. No one in their right mind would ever cut off their right arm for a chance to have a prosthetic. Well, with the help of my friend Seth, I've come up with 3 solutions that can all be combined to solve these problems. The first is a revolutionary nanotechnology that mimics human cells to completely regrow a missing right arm. The second is a photonic circuit embedded in the arm that allows for enhanced fine motor skills and coordination. The third and final solution makes use of artificial intelligence and advanced machine learning to allow for a piece of technology that can assist you in your daily activities that require your right arm. And it gets smarter, stronger, and faster as time goes on. And yes, we combined these all into one with the Smart Palm. Funny name, but it's Smart Palm with 2 M's for now, which stands for Photonic Advanced Real-Time Machine Model. It's called this because we ran through several prototypes using different technology. We found that using electronic circuits limited the processing power into the future, as well as how small we could make it, and made it harder to charge. The photonic model runs entirely on photons, or light, and makes use of the fastest machine learning techniques in the world. Not only that, but it looks exactly like a real arm. Now, you might be thinking I'm making all of this up. I probably would if I was in your seat too. Especially if I didn't know about the countless hours Seth and I have spent on this thing. So, I might as well demonstrate some basic functions for you. I let go of my right arm, reaching for a pencil and a piece of paper with it. I slowly stepped toward the front of the class and began to speak again. This is a blank piece of paper. I spent 1 hour, just 1 hour with the Smart Palm, manually writing random words at home. Now, all I have to do is think in my head that I want to write with the Smart Palm, just as I would with writing normally. However, something I didn't tell you was that the Smart Palm has a tiny, nearly invisible 360-degree camera embedded in the hand. This allows the Smart Palm to see things around it 24/7, which it can then mimic. For example, I saw the rubric for a second of our previous speech sitting by the computer at the start of my presentation. All I have to do now is think that I want to write every word on that rubric exactly how it was on the paper, but in my own handwriting, which I specifically trained it for. I thought about it, and sure enough, my hands started moving the pencil. Not even 5 seconds later, and the entire page was filled with the text from the rubric paper. The whole speech, I had been so nervous that I drowned out any signal from the outside world around me. Suddenly, I heard gasps louder than any gasps I'd heard before as I held the paper up and showed the class. I would have demonstrated how hard and fast I can now hit a tennis ball with my right arm, but I probably couldn't get away with that in a classroom, I said with a smirk, right before my professor told me I was out of time. I didn't have time for a proper conclusion, apparently, but I didn't care much because I was suddenly full of confidence in what I had been demonstrating. I knew the class probably had no idea how big of a deal this innovation was. Thank you, I nodded. How did you do that? My professor asked. I detached my arm completely to prove that it wasn't some kind of magic trick or prank. I waved it in front of the entire class, slowly. Then, I clicked it back into place. I spoke one more time before sitting down. You don't want to know how hard it was to get rid of that dusty old regular arm. That was my first day with the Smart Palm. I prepared the presentation while banking on it working perfectly, and it did. The technology was developed entirely by my friend Seth, but he let me take credit as a contributor in exchange for me testing it and spreading the word, as he did not have the pain tolerance to cut off his own arm and lacked the people skills to convince everyone it was a great idea. He mostly developed it in my bedroom while we hung out after class. Taking the leap to test it on a person was a big deal considering the technology had been developed under a microscope for less than a year and never tested on a person or animal or anything other than a petri dish before. Seth was a genius on a level the world had not yet seen, and I trusted him, which was why I was the first person to test it out. But that did not mean he couldn't make any mistakes. And man, did both of us make a mistake. That night, as I laid in my dark room, unable to sleep out of excitement, I gradually developed the need to use the restroom. I got up, used my right hand to grab the little knob on my lamp, and twisted my photonic fingers. And as there was for most of the day until I went to bed, there was light. I threw myself back in horror, falling off of the bed and hitting my head on the floor hard. The loud thump was probably enough to wake up my parents, but I didn't care. I wanted to throw up at what I was seeing. My pale white skin was now jet black, bumpy and jagged in separate places, and full of large holes. I waved it around quickly as if something was coating my arm despite my knowledge that it was my arm. I felt a sudden full-body itch take over me. Before I had seen it, it had felt completely normal, but now that I had seen it, my senses were completely overwhelmed. I didn't understand why this had happened at first, until I saw tiny streaks of light flowing in lines in the holes in my arm. They looked like extremely thin lasers. It clicked. The arm was powered by light, and I had deprived it of that light, so the robotic cells were decaying. I slowly walked to the restroom, suddenly caring more and more about my parents being awake the more I calmed down. I shut the door behind me softly. Hurling into the toilet, my mind raced with thoughts about messing with nature. I knew that it wasn't that bad, it just looked ugly and painful, but that didn't stop me from being filled with dread.